always figured my end would come in some backwater dive bar or face down in a swamp, not standing before an alien queen with fangs longer than my forearm, being told I was about to become her royal consort. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That particular disaster was still weeks away when this whole mess started. My name's Dane Carter, ex-Alliance Special Forces. Current occupation, salvage hunter, which is a fancy way of saying I pick through the scraps of war for anything worth selling. It's not glamorous, but it keeps fuel in my ship and whiskey in my flask. The planet Korux Prime had been a major battlefield in the human Zarketh War. Now it was just another abandoned wasteland, perfect for folks like me who preferred to stay off the grid. The Alliance had warrants out for my arrest. Desertion, they called it. I called it refusing to follow orders that would have killed innocent civilians. "Milo, environmental scan," I barked at my companion as we trudged through knee-deep muck. "Atmospheric toxicity at acceptable levels. Predator detection negative. Caffeine reserves at critical levels," the robot replied in its tinny voice. Milo wasn't much to look at, just an old AI core I'd salvaged and stuffed into a repurposed coffee maker. He brewed a decent cup and watched my back. In my line of work, that was all the friendship a man needed. "We'll find you some beans after we check out that wreckage," I promised, pointing to the twisted hunk of metal protruding from the swamp ahead. The bioscanners had picked up traces of Zarketh tech, the stuff sold for premium prices on the black market. As we approached, I felt that familiar tingle at the base of my skull. Battlefield instinct. Something wasn't right. "Milo, full spectrum scan. Detecting minimal power signatures and, wait, organic lifeform detected. Small. Zarketh genetic markers present." I drew my plasma cutter, heart hammering. The Zarketh weren't supposed to be here anymore. The 8-foot-tall alien warriors had retreated to their homeworlds after the peace treaty. They were nightmares made flesh, reptilian humanoids with enough strength to tear a man in half and enough intelligence to build interstellar empires. "Hostile?" I whispered. "Unable to determine. Size indicates juvenile specimen." I approached cautiously, boots squelching in the mud. The wreckage was definitely Zarketh design, organic curves melded with metallic components. Some kind of escape pod. That's when I heard it. A soft, pained whimper. Pushing aside a panel of twisted metal, I saw it. A small Zarketh, no bigger than a human toddler. It was curled up, trembling. Purple blood oozed from a gash across its scaled back. Its eyes, all 4 of them, were barely open, glowing a faint gold in the gloom. "Shit," I muttered. Alliance protocol was clear. Terminate any Zarketh encountered in human-controlled space. They were considered too dangerous to capture, even the young ones. The creature looked up at me, making a chirping sound that somehow pierced right through my carefully constructed emotional armor. "Don't even think about it, Dane," I told myself. "It's not a puppy. It's a monster that will grow up to eat people." But as I raised my weapon, the little creature extended a tiny clawed hand toward me. When its skin touched mine, something impossible happened. Its scales began to glow with intricate patterns, pulsing blue light that spread across its entire body. "Milo," I said, voice hoarse with shock. "What the hell is that?" Bioluminescent response, consistent with, "Oh my, Dane, this is not good." "Spit it out, coffee pot." "That's a royal Zarketh bioform. The luminescence is a genetic marker exclusive to their monarchy. This is not just any Zarketh juvenile. It's royalty." I looked down at the creature, which had somehow wrapped its little claws around my index finger. Its wounds were severe. It wouldn't survive without medical attention. I should have walked away, should have put it out of its misery, should have done anything except what I actually did. "Milo, prep the medbay." "Dane, this course of action is inadvisable on approximately 17 different levels." I scooped up the creature, which immediately nestled against my chest with a sound almost like purring. "Yeah, well, add it to my list of bad decisions." As I carried the alien child back to my ship, I had no idea I was walking straight into an interstellar incident that would change the course of history for two species. Or that in a few weeks I'd be engaged to its mother. The little monster bit me the moment I tried to clean its wounds. Son of a! I yanked my hand back, watching blood well up from the neat row of puncture marks. That's gratitude for you. The creature hissed, four eyes narrowed, backed into a corner of my ship's small medical bay. It was looking better after the regenerative gel I'd applied to its wounds, but clearly wasn't feeling any friendlier. Chomp, I decided, dabbing antiseptic on my hand. That's what I'm calling you. Seems fitting. Milo, perched on a nearby counter, made a sound suspiciously like a snort. Naming it implies you intend to keep it. It's temporary, I insisted, just until it heals. Then we dump it somewhere the Zarketh can find it. A sound plan, except for the part where we're harboring royal Zarketh offspring, which carries a minimum sentence of execution in Alliance space and ritual disembowelment in Zarketh territory. I ignored him, focusing on Chomp. The little alien was examining its surroundings with obvious intelligence. It couldn't be more than the equivalent of 3 or 4 human years old, but there was something ancient in those golden eyes. Hey, I said softly, taking a nutrition bar from my pocket. You hungry? I broke off a piece and held it out. Chomp stared suspiciously, then in a lightning-fast movement, snatched it from my fingers without making contact. Progress, I muttered. Over the next few days, a routine developed. I'd feed Chomp, try to communicate, and get bitten for my troubles. Milo would remind me of all the laws I was breaking. I'd ignore him and pour another coffee, rinse and repeat. But something changed on the 5th day. I woke to find Chomp sitting on my chest, staring at me with unblinking eyes. Morning, monster, I grunted, expecting it to scurry away as usual. Instead, it reached out one clawed hand and patted my stubbled cheek. Pa, I froze. What did you just say? Pa, it repeated, looking pleased with itself. Chomp's pa. I sat bolt upright, sending the creature tumbling into my lap. Milo, it talked. Of course it talked, Milo replied from the doorway. Zarketh are highly intelligent, with accelerated language acquisition compared to humans. It's been listening to us for days. Chomp climbed back up my chest, this time perching on my shoulder. Its tail wrapped around my neck, not threateningly, but almost affectionately. Pa make food? It asked hopefully. I couldn't help laughing. Yeah, sure. Pa make food. As I prepared breakfast, protein gruel for me, raw synthesized protein cubes for Chomp, Milo hovered nearby, his processor whirring with obvious concern. Dane, I've been analyzing our little guest's genetic markers, he said finally. I'm afraid the situation is more complicated than we thought. How so? This isn't just any royal offspring. Based on the specific luminescent patterns and genetic sequences I've detected, this appears to be a genetically modified Zarketh, a very specific type created only for the highest echelons of their monarchy. I looked at Chomp, happily gnawing on a protein cube. What are you saying? I believe we are in possession of a Zarketh princess, one specifically engineered for succession to the throne. I dropped my spoon. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I were. And there's more. The modifications I'm detecting suggest this child was created within the last 5 years, which is very strange, considering the Zarketh royal line was reportedly terminated during the final battles of the war. Before I could process this bombshell, alarm klaxons blared throughout the ship. Proximity alert, Milo reported. Multiple armed humanoids approaching. I grabbed Chomp, who squeaked in surprise, and rushed to the viewport. Outside I could see at least 8 figures in matte black armor moving through the swamp toward my ship. Alliance Special Forces, I muttered. How the hell did they find us? Unknown. But their weaponry appears to be set for maximum lethality. I set Chomp down. Hide, I told her firmly. Bad people coming. Understand? She nodded, eyes wide, and scampered into a ventilation duct I'd never have fit through. I grabbed my old service pistol from under the console. It had been years since I'd had to fight other humans, but some skills you never forget. Milo, lock down all entrances except the main airlock. When they breach, Vent atmospheric steam to reduce visibility. Understood. And may I suggest not dying? I'm quite attached to our continued existence. I grinned despite the situation. I'll do my best. The first explosion rocked the ship as they breached the outer airlock. I positioned myself behind a bulkhead, weapon ready. As the inner doors slid open, clouds of steam obscured the entrance, just as planned. The first soldier stepped through, weapons sweeping the area. I recognized the stance, the movements. Alliance Black Ops, the elite unit I'd once belonged to. "Clear the steam," a voice commanded. "Target is armed and dangerous." "Dane Carter," another voice called out. "By authority of the Alliance Military Tribunal, you are ordered to surrender yourself and turn over the Zarketh specimen." So they knew about Chomp. This wasn't about my desertion, it was about her. "I don't have anything that belongs to you," I called back, "and I'm not in a surrendering mood. The alien is Alliance property. It was recovered from a classified research facility. Surrender it now, and your sentence may be reduced." Research facility? What the hell were they talking about? "Last chance, Carter. We have orders to terminate the specimen if we can't secure it." That's when I made my decision. These weren't soldiers following legitimate orders. They were here to capture or kill a child. I fired twice, taking out the steam vents above the airlock. The sudden high-pressure blast knocked the first two soldiers back, giving me the opening I needed. I charged forward, firing precisely. What followed was the kind of close-quarters combat I'd hoped never to engage in again. I was outnumbered but had home field advantage and years of experience fighting dirty. Two soldiers went down with non-lethal shots to their extremities. A third I knocked unconscious with the butt of my weapon. But they were good, the best the Alliance had. A shot grazed my shoulder, and a combat knife found its way between my ribs before I could dodge. I was losing ground, bleeding, when I heard a high-pitched screech from above. Chomp had emerged from hiding and was crawling along the ceiling, her scales glowing brilliant blue in distress. "No!" I shouted. "Stay back!" The lead soldier looked up, raising his weapon toward Chomp. "Target acquired." I've never moved so fast in my life. Ignoring the knife still embedded in my side, I launched myself at him, tackling him to the ground. His shot went wide, hitting the ceiling instead. "You don't touch her," I growled, smashing his helmet visor with repeated blows until he stopped moving. The remaining soldiers faltered, clearly not expecting such ferocity. I used their hesitation to my advantage. "Get off my ship," I snarled, standing protectively beneath where Chomp clung to the ceiling. "Next one who moves gets a plasma bolt between the eyes." The soldier who appeared to be second in command slowly raised his hands. "Carter, you're making a mistake. You don't know what that thing is." "I know she's under my protection. That thing was engineered in an Alliance Black lab. It's dangerous, designed to bond with a single host and eliminate all others it perceives as threats. It's already imprinted on you. Soon it will start changing, becoming more dangerous." I kept my weapon steady. "You've got 5 seconds to grab your wounded and leave." The soldier's expression hardened behind his damaged helmet. "You're a deserter, Carter, a traitor to your species, and now you're harboring an enemy asset. There's nowhere in the galaxy you can hide from us." 5, 4. They backed away, dragging their unconscious comrades. At the airlock, the leader paused. "The Zarketh will kill you too, once they find out you have it. You've chosen death either way." After they'd gone, I collapsed against the bulkhead, the adrenaline fading and pain taking its place. Chomp dropped from the ceiling onto my lap, chirping in distress. "Pa hurt," she said, touching the knife still in my side with gentle claws. "I'll be okay, kiddo," I managed, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Milo activated the medical drone, which hovered over to begin treatment. "That was unnecessarily heroic," he commented. "Yeah, well." I winced as the drone extracted the knife. "Couldn't let them take her. The soldiers' claims about her creation, don't want to hear it," I cut him off. "Whatever she is, wherever she came from, she's just a kid." Chomp curled up against my uninjured side, her scales still glowing faintly. "Chomp, stay with Pa," she declared. As the drone administered painkillers and my vision began to blur, I found myself making a promise I had no business making. "Yeah," I murmured, putting a hand on her small head. Pa's not going anywhere. I had no idea how impossible that promise would be to keep. We needed to leave, and fast. The Alliance would be back with reinforcements. Set course for the outer rim, I told Milo as I limped to the cockpit, still recovering from my wounds. Somewhere off the charts, smuggler's territory. Our fuel reserves are insufficient for such a journey, Milo pointed out. We require resupply. Then find me a black market outpost within range, somewhere the Alliance doesn't have eyes. As Milo calculated routes, I checked on Chomp. She'd been unusually quiet since the attack, her usual energetic exploration replaced by watchfulness. She followed me everywhere, always staying within arm's reach. "You okay, monster?" I asked, kneeling despite the pain in my side. She nodded, then surprised me by reaching out to touch my bandaged ribs. "Bad humans hurt Pa." "Yeah, but I'm tough. See, already getting better." Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a Zarketh expression I was learning meant deep thought. Why bad humans want Chomp? How do you explain political complexities to a child, especially one from another species? I settled for the simplest truth. Because you're special, and sometimes people want special things they can't have. This seemed to satisfy her. She nodded solemnly. "Chomp special. Stay with Pa." "That's right." I ruffled the crest of scales on her head, something I'd discovered she enjoyed. "Now want to help me fly this bucket of bolts?" Her eyes lit up, quite literally, the golden irises glowing brighter. "Chomp fly ship." I lifted her onto my lap at the pilot's seat, letting her put her little claws on the control yoke. She was growing fast, already heavier than when I'd found her vocabulary expanding exponentially. "Route calculated," Milo announced. "Nearest suitable location is Blacktooth Station. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. I grimaced. Blacktooth had a reputation for being ruthless even by criminal standards, but beggars couldn't be choosers. "Engage thrusters, co-pilot," I told Chomp, who gleefully pushed the ignition button. The ship lurched upward, breaking atmosphere with a bone-rattling shudder. As Corax Prime dwindled behind us, I allowed myself a moment of optimism. Maybe we'd outrun the Alliance. Find somewhere safe to figure out what to do with Chomp long-term. That optimism lasted exactly 4 hours and 26 minutes. "Dane!" Milo's voice cut through my half-doze. "We have a situation." I jolted awake. Chomp was curled up asleep in a makeshift nest of blankets nearby. "What kind of situation?" "Massive gravitational anomaly detected ahead, consistent with a large vessel emerging from hyperspace." My blood ran cold. "Alliance cruiser?" "Negative. Energy signature is Zarketh." I stared at the view screen as it resolved to show the emerging shape. It wasn't just a Zarketh ship. It was a Zarketh dreadnought, a massive vessel the size of a small city, bristling with bioorganic weaponry that could reduce my little ship to atoms. "How the hell did they find us?" I whispered. Chomp stirred in her sleep, her scales beginning to pulse with blue light. The intensity increased as the Zarketh ship drew nearer. "I believe we have our answer," Milo said quietly. "She appears to be broadcasting a subspace signal through her bioluminescence, some kind of homing beacon encoded in her royal genetics." Before I could process this betrayal, our communication system crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice filled the cockpit, speaking perfect but heavily accented English. "Unidentified vessel, you are in possession of property belonging to the sovereign dominion of Zarketh. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction." I looked at Chomp, still sleeping peacefully. Property? Is that how they viewed their own children? "Milo, open a channel." "Dane, diplomatic relations are not your strong suit. Just do it." The comm light blinked green. I took a deep breath. "This is Dane Carter. I'm not looking for trouble. I found an injured Zarketh child and provided medical care. She's safe and healthy. If she belongs with your people, I'm willing to discuss transfer, but I want assurances she won't be harmed." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, sounding surprised. "The child lives? Verification required. Transmit visual confirmation. I hesitated, then nodded to Milo, who activated the internal camera focused on Chomp's sleeping form. Her scales still pulsed with blue light, but now a pattern of gold had emerged along her spine, something I hadn't seen before. The silence that followed was unnerving. Finally, the voice spoke again, but not to me. I could hear it addressing someone else, the words shifting to the clicking, hissing language of the Zarketh. Then, in English, "Prepare for royal boarding party. Any act of aggression toward Her Majesty will result in the destruction of your vessel and prolonged execution rituals for all occupants." Her Majesty, were they sending their queen to collect one lost child? Milo, what are my options here? Logistically speaking, 0. We cannot outrun them. We cannot fight them. Surrender with dignity is our only viable choice. I moved to wake Chomp, but as I touched her shoulder, her eyes snapped open, all four suddenly alert and focused on the view screen showing the massive Zarketh vessel. "Mother," she said simply. A massive docking tube extended from the dreadnought, connecting to our airlock with mechanical precision. I could feel the vibration as it sealed against our hull. "Chomp," I said urgently, "do you know what's happening? Who's coming?" She nodded, suddenly looking both excited and apprehensive. "Queen comes, mother of all, Red Claw." "Your mother is the Zarketh Queen?" I asked, my mind reeling. "All mothers, all daughters, Red Claw rules." Her explanation made little sense to me, but there was no time to clarify. The airlock hissed open. I stood protectively in front of Chomp as heavy footsteps approached. First came 4 Zarketh warriors, each nearly 8 feet tall, clad in living armor that seemed to pulse and shift with their movements. Their scales were midnight black, eyes burning red. Each carried what looked like a spear, but was undoubtedly much more lethal. They formed a perfect square, facing outward, creating a protected space in their center. And into that space stepped the most terrifying and magnificent being I'd ever seen. She was taller than her guards, her scales a deep crimson that caught the light like burnished metal. A crest of what looked like crystalline spines rose from her head, forming a natural crown. Unlike the 4 eyes of the guards and Chomp, she had 6, arranged in a pattern across her regal face, all glowing with golden fire. Most striking of all were her claws, longer than combat knives, and the same deep red as her scales, but tipped with what looked like actual metal, bioorganic weapons grown from her own body. This was Queen Zarethka the Red Claw, ruler of the Zarketh Dominion, architect of wars and peacemaker to galaxies, and she was staring at me with an intensity that made me feel like a bug about to be squashed. "You," she said, her voice resonating in my chest, "are the human who claimed our lost heir?" Before I could answer, Chomp darted out from behind me with a happy chirp. "Mother!" she called, running toward the Queen. The guards tensed, weapons twitching, but the Queen raised a single clawed hand, stopping them. She knelt, her massive frame still dwarfing the child, and examined Chomp with all 6 eyes. "The royal pattern manifests," she confirmed, touching the golden markings on Chomp's spine. "The bloodline lives." Then she looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "Explain, human. How came you to possess the last daughter of the sovereign line?" I told her everything, finding the escape pod, healing Chomp's wounds, the Alliance attack. As I spoke, I realized how insane it all sounded. I'd gone from deserter to salvager to alien child caretaker to whatever the hell I was now. The Queen listened without interruption. When I finished, she rose to her full height. "Your actions defy understanding," she said finally. "Our intelligence indicated this child was destroyed in an Alliance attack on our royal nursery vessel. That you found her, healed her, and protected her from your own kind." She paused, her head tilting slightly. "You named her Chomp?" I winced. She bit me a lot at first. It seemed fitting at the time. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her alien features. "Her true name is Zara Vex Cathal Mordenka, 7th seed of the Eternal Clutch, bearer of the future crown." Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful for bedtime stories, I admitted, then immediately regretted my informality. But instead of disemboweling me on the spot, the queen made a sound that took me a moment to recognize as laughter, a rumbling, clicking noise that seemed to surprise even her guards. "The child appears bonded to you," she observed as Chomp scampered back to hide partially behind my legs, peeking out at the intimidating royal party. "We've been through a lot together," I said, resting a hand on Chomp's or Zara Vex's head. "Pa saved Chomp," the little alien declared proudly. "Pa fights bad humans." The queen went utterly still. "What word did you use, young one?" Chomp looked confused. "Pa," she repeated, pointing up at me. "Chomp's pa." The guards let out collective hisses of shock. The queen's eyes narrowed to slits of golden fire. "You taught her to call you this?" she demanded, her voice suddenly dangerous. "No, she just started saying it on her own. I didn't—" "She named you," the queen interrupted. "In our tongue, the one who is named Pa by royal offspring is—" She stopped, seeming almost at a loss for words. "Is what?" I prompted, a sense of dread building. One of the guards leaned toward the queen, whispering something in their language. She hissed sharply in response, but the guard persisted. Finally, she turned back to me. "By the ancient laws of the Zarketh, unchangeable even by royal decree, the one named Pa or Ma by a royal hatchling becomes the legal and biological mate of the hatchling's birthgiver." I blinked, certain I'd misunderstood. "I'm sorry, what?" "You have been claimed as my consort," she stated flatly. "The child has invoked the ritual of naming. It is irreversible." "Whoa, wait." I held up my hands. "There must be some mistake, some cultural misunderstanding. I'm human. This can't be legal." "The laws of succession transcend species," she replied implacably. "They were established eons before we encountered your kind." Chomp looked between us, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its cause. "Pa and Mother angry?" The queen's expression softened slightly as she regarded the child. "No, young one. Your mother is adjusting to unexpected developments." One of the guards stepped forward. "My queen, this is unprecedented. A human cannot be royal consort. The council will never accept—" "The council does not dictate to me," she cut him off with a growl that made the guard step back. "The laws are clear. The naming has occurred. Whether convenient or not, this human is now bound to the royal bloodline." She turned those 6 golden eyes back to me, and I could swear I saw a hint of wicked amusement there. "Congratulations, Dane Carter. You are to be wedded to the Queen of the Zarketh Dominion. I suggest you prepare yourself accordingly." As if on cue, Milo chimed in from the console where he'd been silently observing. "Well," my coffee-maker companion said, "I believe the traditional human response to such news is, 'I need a drink.'" For once, the sarcastic AI had it exactly right. The next few days were a blur of royal protocols, cultural briefings, and increasingly surreal developments. I was transferred to the Zarketh Dreadnought, a vessel called the Sovereign Talon, and given luxurious quarters that still somehow felt like a prison. Chomp, who I couldn't stop thinking of by that name despite knowing her proper royal title, divided her time between me and the queen. She seemed delighted by the arrangement, blissfully unaware of the political chaos she'd created. "You look terrible," Milo observed on the 3rd morning. They'd allowed me to bring him, more as a translator than a companion. I glared at the coffee maker. "I'm being forced to marry the alien queen of a species that was trying to exterminate humans less than a decade ago. How am I supposed to look? Less hungover would be a start. The Zarketh Royal Advisory Council is scheduled to meet with you in 30 minutes. I groaned, downing the bitter stimulant the Zarketh used in place of coffee. It tasted like burnt rubber, but had twice the caffeine. What do they want now? More tissue samples? Another cultural compatibility assessment? The Zarketh scientists had been poking and prodding me like a lab specimen. I believe they wished to discuss the consummation requirements of the Royal Union. I choked on my drink. The what? Among the Zarketh, Royal marriages must be physically sealed within their equivalent of a lunar cycle. There are apparently very specific rituals. Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop. This isn't happening. I'm not actually going to marry the queen. This is all some diplomatic game until they figure out how to get around their ancient laws. Milo's processor whirred skeptically. The Zarketh take their traditions quite seriously, and Queen Zarketh has been surprisingly accommodating. That was true, and it puzzled me. The fearsome Red Claw, terror of the battlefield, had been almost courteous. She'd personally explained aspects of Zarketh culture to me, ensured my comfort, and spent hours discussing Chomp's development during her time with me. A chime at the door interrupted my thoughts. Instead of the expected guards, Queen Zarketh herself entered, ducking her head slightly under the doorframe. I scrambled to my feet, still not sure of the proper etiquette. "Your Majesty, this is unexpected." She dismissed my formality with a wave of her clawed hand. "We must speak privately, Dane Carter." Milo took the hint, activating his mobility treads. "I believe I'll inventory the royal kitchen's coffee reserves." When we were alone, the Queen surprised me by sitting down, bringing her intimidating height closer to my level. Up close, I could see the intricate patterns in her scales, the subtle shifts of color that seemed to reflect her mood. "The council is displeased," she began without preamble, "about a human becoming royal consort." "I'm shocked," I replied dryly. The corner of her mouth twitched in what I was learning to recognize as amusement. "Indeed. They have presented 17 different legal arguments against our union, all invalid but indicative of their desperation. And you? Are you desperate to avoid this too?" Her 6 eyes studied me intently. "I am pragmatic. The survival of my line and the stability of my empire are my priorities." "That doesn't answer my question." "No," she acknowledged. "It does not." She leaned forward slightly. "What do you know of recent Zarketh history, Dane Carter?" The shift in topic caught me off guard. "Not much beyond the war. Your people attacked human colonies. We fought back. Eventually, there was a peace treaty, a simplified narrative. The truth is more complex. The war began because a faction within my government orchestrated attacks without my authorization. By the time I regained control, both sides were committed to destruction." I frowned. "You're saying you didn't want the war?" "War is inefficient. I prefer conquest through assimilation and alliance." Her claws tapped thoughtfully against the armrest. "When peace was finally negotiated, certain concessions were made. One was that my direct bloodline would end with me, no more royal offspring. But Chomp was created in secret, a final act of defiance against extinction. I sent her away in a biological escape vessel when I learned of a coup attempt. I believed her lost." Her voice carried genuine emotion for the first time. "You gave her back to me." I was beginning to see the bigger picture. "And now you need to protect her. The factions that sought to end my line still exist. They will view her as an abomination, a violation of the treaty. They will seek to destroy her, and me." "Unless you have a powerful new ally," I realized. "A human consort changes the political equation." She inclined her head, the crystal spines of her crown catching the light. "A union between our species, formalized at the highest level, would rewrite our relationship with humanity. Those who wish for renewed conflict would lose support. So, I'm a political tool." "You are an opportunity," she corrected. "One I did not seek, but now recognize the value of. The question is whether you are capable of recognizing it as well." Before I could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Queen rose in a fluid motion, suddenly every inch the warrior ruler. "Security breach," she hissed, scales shifting to a darker crimson. "Report," she commanded, activating a communication device on her wrist. A guard's voice responded in Zarketh language. The Queen's expression darkened further. "What's happening?" I demanded. "Alliance forces have breached our outer defenses," she replied grimly. "They demand the return of their property, both you and the child." My blood ran cold. "How did they find us?" "Unknown. But they threaten military action if we do not comply." Her eyes narrowed. They claim you stole classified bioweapons from their research facilities. That's a lie. I found Chomp in a Zarketh escape pod. A pod that may have been captured and repurposed, she suggested. The Alliance has been experimenting with our biotechnology for years. More alarms sounded, these with a different pitch. The Queen hissed in what sounded like genuine concern. Internal security breach. We have infiltrators aboard. She moved toward the door, then hesitated. Come, the child must be protected. I didn't need to be told twice. Whatever political games were happening, Chomp was in danger. We raced through corridors that seemed to pulse with organic life, the Queen's guards falling in around us as we moved. Zarketh crew members scrambled to battle stations, the ship transforming from royal residence to war machine. Where is she? I asked as we entered a massive chamber that appeared to be some kind of throne room. The royal nursery is adjacent to my private chambers. This way. As we crossed the ornate space, the lights suddenly dimmed. Emergency illumination cast eerie shadows across the biological architecture. Power systems compromised, a guard reported. Security protocols failing. The Queen snarled, her claws extending to their full, lethal length. Protect the approaches. Nothing reaches the nursery. I drew the weapon they'd allowed me to keep, more a gesture of goodwill than an actual concession, given how little damage it could do to Zarketh physiology. We had almost reached the far doors when they burst open. 6 figures in the same Black Ops armor I'd faced on my ship charged in, weapons raised. Target acquired, one called. Queen and the deserter, primary objective in adjacent chamber. They'd come for Chomp. What followed was chaos. The Queen moved with shocking speed for her size, tearing into the attackers with primal fury. Her guards engaged others, the room filled with plasma fire and the screech of metal against the organic material of Zarketh weaponry. I fired at one operative who'd broken from the group, heading toward the nursery doors. My shot caught him in the leg, sending him sprawling. Before he could recover, I was on him, smashing his helmet with the butt of my weapon. "You don't touch her!" I growled. The same words I'd spoken on my ship. I meant them even more now. "Carter!" The Queen's voice cut through the battle noise. "The nursery!" I looked up to see that 2 operatives had bypassed the fighting and were placing some kind of device on the nursery doors. An explosive charge. I sprinted across the room, firing as I ran. One shot caught an operative in the shoulder, spinning him away from the door. But the other had already activated the charge. The explosion knocked me off my feet. When my vision cleared, there was a smoking hole where the doors had been. I scrambled up, charging through the breach. The nursery beyond was a surreal contrast to the battle, a peaceful, dimly lit space filled with soft, organic shapes. And in the center, Chomp stood frozen in fear, her scales pulsing rapidly between blue and gold. The operative was approaching her, some kind of containment device in his hands. "Stop!" I shouted, raising my weapon. He turned, and through his damaged helmet visor, I could see cold determination. "Step aside, Carter. This isn't about you." "The hell it isn't. That's my kid you're threatening." He paused, then let out a harsh laugh. "Your kid? You really don't know what it is, do you?" "What you are." "I know exactly what she is," I said, keeping my weapon trained on him. "She's under my protection." "Protection?" He shook his head. "You're as much a lab experiment as it is. Why do you think you bonded so easily? Why the Queen hasn't killed you yet? You were made for each other. Literally." Before I could process his words, Chomp let out a terrified shriek. The operative had lunged for her, containment device open. I fired without hesitation. The shot took him directly in the chest, breaching his armor. He staggered, then fell. Chomp ran to me, leaping into my arms with enough force to make me stumble. "Pa!" she sobbed, burying her face against my chest. "It's okay," I murmured, holding her tight. "I've got you." The Queen appeared in the doorway, her scales slick with what I assumed was human blood. She took in the scene with a sweeping gaze of all 6 eyes. "You killed for her," she observed, looking at the fallen operative. "I told you," I said simply. "She's under my protection." Something shifted in the Queen's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. "We have repelled the attack," she informed me. "Their vessel retreats, but this is only the beginning." I nodded, still holding Chomp. What did he mean? About me being a lab experiment? About us being made for each other? The Queen's expression turned unreadable. "Later. Now we must secure the ship and prepare for the joining ceremony." Joining ceremony? After all this, you still want to go through with the marriage? "Now more than ever," she said firmly. "Our enemies have shown their hand. They fear our alliance, which means it is exactly what we must pursue." As she turned to issue orders to her guards, I looked down at Chomp, who had fallen asleep in my arms, exhausted by fear and excitement. Whatever the truth was about my connection to her and the Queen, one thing was certain: I would do whatever it took to keep her safe. Even if it meant becoming the consort to the most dangerous being in the galaxy. The royal wedding preparations proceeded at a frantic pace. The attack had galvanized the Queen's supporters and silenced many of her critics. Nothing united the Zarketh like an external threat. I spent most of my time with Chomp, keeping her close after the near abduction. She seemed to have bounced back from the trauma with the resilience of youth, but I noticed she grew anxious whenever I was out of sight. "You make a surprisingly competent father," Queen Zarketh commented, finding us in one of the ship's arboretums. Chomp was chasing what looked like bioluminescent butterflies through the alien foliage. "Thanks, I think." The Queen settled beside me on a bench formed from living wood. In the 5 days since the attack, we'd developed a cautious rapport. I was still wary of her. She was, after all, the most powerful Zarketh alive and capable of disemboweling me with a casual swipe. But I'd also glimpsed moments of something almost like humanity in her. "The ceremony will take place tomorrow," she informed me. "My scientists have adapted the biological components to accommodate your physiology." I suppressed a shudder. The wedding involved some kind of biological merging that I still didn't fully understand. "There's something you're not telling me," I said directly. "About me, about why Chomp bonded with me so quickly." She was silent for a long moment, watching her daughter, our daughter I supposed, playing innocently among the strange plants. "What do you know of your origins, Dane Carter?" she finally asked. The question caught me off guard. "Not much. Orphaned young, raised in Alliance care facilities, enlisted as soon as I was old enough. And before the orphanage, your parents?" "Died in a colony attack. One of the first Zarketh raids." I gave her a pointed look. "Your people killed them." She didn't react to the accusation. "Did you ever undergo genetic testing in the Alliance military?" "Standard procedure. They said I had some genetic anomalies, but nothing that affected performance." I frowned. "Why?" Instead of answering, she extended one of her hands toward mine. "May I?" Hesitantly, I placed my hand in her much larger one. Her scales were smooth and surprisingly warm. With her other hand, she produced a small device and pressed it against my palm. There was a slight sting. "What are you—" "Confirming a theory." The device projected a holographic display showing what looked like complex genetic sequences. She studied them intently, then nodded as if confirming something she already suspected. 23 years ago, she began. During the early conflicts between our species, both sides engaged in experimental programs. Biological weapons, enhanced soldiers, genetic modifications, most failed. A cold feeling spread through my chest. "What are you saying?" "The Alliance captured some of our genetic material, specifically royal bloodline samples. They attempted to create hybrid soldiers who could interface with our biotechnology." I pulled my hand away. "That's insane. I'm human." "Primarily, yes. But approximately 8% of your genetic structure contains modified Zarketh royal markers, specifically engineered to be compatible with direct royal bloodline." The operative's words echoed in my mind. "You're as much a lab experiment as it is." That's why Chomp bonded with me, I realized. Why she started calling me Pa. She sensed the genetic similarity. The Queen inclined her head. "And why the naming took hold so powerfully? Your genetic structure recognized hers as compatible, triggering the ancient biological protocols our monarchy evolved over millennia. I stood up, needing to move. So this whole thing, the marriage, the political alliance, it's all based on some sick experiment the alliance conducted? Does the origin matter more than the outcome? She countered. You care for the child. She adores you. And our union could end centuries of conflict between our species. But it's built on a lie. Is it? She rose as well, her imposing height forcing me to look up. Tell me, Dane Carter, when you look at her, she gestured toward Chomp, do you see a lie? When you risked your life to protect her, was that deception? I followed her gaze to where Chomp had noticed our serious conversation and was now watching us with concern. No, I admitted. That part's real. Then perhaps we build on that truth, rather than dwelling on the circumstances that brought us here. Before I could respond, Milo approached, hovering on his mobility treads. Pardon the interruption, Your Majesty, Dane, but I've completed the analysis you requested. The Queen nodded. Proceed. I've cross-referenced Dane's genetic markers with the data from the Royal Archives you provided. The match is conclusive. Furthermore, I've identified the specific Alliance Black project responsible, Operation Chimera. You knew about this? I asked Milo, feeling betrayed. I suspected. Your unusual compatibility with Zarketh biotechnology has been evident since you first interacted with Chomp, but I required access to the Royal Genetic Database to confirm. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Milo countered. Without evidence, without context. You barely accepted you were bonding with a Zarketh child, let alone that you shared genetic material with her species. He had a point. I wouldn't have believed it. There's more, Milo continued. The Alliance attack was not random. According to communications I intercepted, they've been tracking you since your desertion. Not primarily for your military crimes, but because you're one of the only surviving subjects of Operation Chimera. When you bonded with the princess, it triggered genetic markers they've been monitoring. I sat back down heavily, trying to process all this. So I'm what? Some kind of human Zarketh hybrid? A walking science experiment? You are Dane Carter, the Queen said firmly. A warrior who protected my daughter when I could not. The rest is merely context for how you came to be that man. Chomp, sensing the tension, came running over. She climbed into my lap with practiced ease, looking up at me with those 4 golden eyes. Pa sad? She asked, touching my face with gentle claws. I managed a smile. No, kiddo, just thinking. She looked between me and the Queen. Mother and Pa friends now? The Queen made that rumbling, clicking sound of amusement. Something like that, young one. Chomp beamed, her scales glowing bright blue with happiness. Good. Family together. Family. The word hit me harder than I expected. I'd been alone for so long. A deserter, a fugitive, a man without connections. Now, through the strangest possible circumstances, I had... what? A daughter. A fiancé who happened to be an alien queen. A coffee maker with an attitude problem. It was absurd. And yet, looking at Chomp's trusting face, I couldn't bring myself to reject it. Tomorrow's ceremony, I said to the Queen. What exactly does it involve? She seemed pleased by the implicit acceptance. A biological linking, nothing too invasive for your physiology. We've adapted the process. It creates a hormonal and pheromonal bond recognized by all Zarketh as a legitimate royal union. And after? What would my role be? Officially, royal consort, advisor to the throne. Parent to the heir. She hesitated, then added, in practice there is flexibility. We would define the parameters together. It was the most uncertain I'd seen her, the mighty red claw, actually acknowledging room for negotiation. I have conditions, I said. Name them. Chomp's safety comes first, always, and I want the truth about what happened to my parents. If they really died in a Zarketh attack, or if that was another Alliance lie. She nodded. Acceptable. What else? Milo stays with me, with full access to your databases and systems. Granted, with standard security protocols. I took a deep breath. And I want to work toward actual peace between our species. Not just a political alliance, but something real. No more experiments. No more proxy wars. No more treating each other as monsters. The Queen studied me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, she extended her hand, not to shake, but palm up, in a gesture of vulnerability I'd never seen from a Zarketh. "On this," she said, "we are aligned." I placed my hand in hers, acutely aware of Chomp watching us with bright-eyed interest. "Then I guess we have a wedding to prepare for." The ceremonial chamber was unlike anything I'd ever seen, a vast space where organic and technological elements merged seamlessly. The walls pulsed with bioluminescence in patterns that seemed to respond to the movement of the gathered Zarketh dignitaries. I stood at the center of it all, dressed in a combination of human formal wear and adapted Zarketh ceremonial armor. The hybrid outfit was symbolic, much like me, I supposed. Milo hovered nearby, serving as both translator and moral support. "You look moderately less terrified than expected," he observed. "Thanks for the vote of confidence. The biological linking apparatus has been successfully modified for your physiology," he assured me. "Only a 12% chance of catastrophic rejection." "You're really not helping." A resonant tone silenced the assembled crowd. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber opened to reveal Queen Zarketh in full ceremonial regalia. Her scales had been enhanced with some kind of metallic overlay, creating an effect like living armor. The crystal spines of her crown now extended in an elaborate display, and her 6 eyes glowed with intense golden fire. She was terrifying and magnificent, and I was about to marry her. As she processed toward me, flanked by her elite guards, I noticed Chomp walking just behind her. The little Zarketh was adorned with miniature versions of her mother's regalia, her scales polished to a gleaming blue. When they reached the central platform where I waited, Chomp broke protocol by rushing forward to hug my legs. "Pa pretty," she declared, examining my outfit with approval. A ripple of clicking sounds, Zarketh laughter, spread through the crowd. The Queen's expression remained dignified, but I could swear I saw amusement in her eyes. "The child speaks truth," she said formally. "You honor us with your presence, Dane Carter." "Likewise, Your Majesty." The ceremony began with rituals I barely understood, proclamations in the Zarketh language, presentations of symbolic objects, bioluminescent displays from the royal guards. Throughout it all, Chomp remained by my side, occasionally whispering explanations that made more sense to her than to me. Finally, the moment arrived for the biological linking. A strange apparatus emerged from the floor, part altar, part medical device. It featured 2 recessed areas clearly meant for the Queen and me to place our hands. "The joining of blood and scale," announced the Zarketh officiant, "through which 2 become connected in the eyes of ancestors and descendants alike." The Queen stepped forward, placing her massive hand in one depression. She looked at me expectantly. This was it, the point of no return. I could still walk away, though away would mean into the vacuum of space given my current situation. But as I looked at Chomp's hopeful face, at the Queen's unexpectedly vulnerable expression, at the assembled Zarketh waiting to see if peace was possible, I knew there was only one choice. I placed my hand in the second depression. Immediately, organic tendrils wrapped around both our wrists. Not painfully, but firmly. The apparatus began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with the Queen's bioluminescence. I felt a sharp sting, then warmth spreading up my arm. The sensation wasn't unpleasant, more like the buzz of good whiskey, but concentrated and intensified. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she felt something similar. "The biological protocols accept the union," the officiant declared. "The genetic resonance is harmonious." As the tendrils retracted, I felt different. I couldn't put it into words, but something had changed at a fundamental level. When I looked at the Queen, I could somehow sense her presence more keenly, as if a new awareness had been added to my perception. "It is done," she said softly. "We are joined." The assembled Zarketh erupted in a combination of roars, hisses, and stamping that I assumed was their version of applause. Chomp jumped up and down in excitement. "Family! Family!" The celebration was interrupted by a massive explosion that rocked the entire ship. Alarm klaxons blared as the lights flickered. "Multiple hull breaches detected," announced a voice over the communication system. "Unknown attackers, boarding in progress." The Queen immediately shifted from ceremonial mode to battle commander. "Secure the royal family," she ordered. "All warriors to defense positions." Guards surrounded us, ushering us toward a protected exit. As we moved, I caught a glimpse of combat breaking out at the main doors, black armored figures fighting against the Zarketh warriors. "Alliance Special Forces," I muttered. "But how did they get past the ship's defenses?" "Treachery," the Queen hissed. "Internal assistance." We hurried through corridors that seemed to be sealing themselves behind us, the ship's organic components responding to the threat. Chomp clung to my hand, her scales pulsing with fear. "It's okay," I assured her. "We'll get you somewhere safe." "Not safe," she whispered. "Bad humans want Chomp." The Queen led us to what appeared to be a command center, a secure room with view screens showing the battle raging throughout the ship. "Status?" she demanded of a Zarketh officer. "Alliance forces breached at 6 points simultaneously. Internal sabotage of defensive systems. We have contained 5 breaches, but 1 team has penetrated to the royal level." "Their target?" "Unknown, my Queen. But they are moving toward this position." I looked at the tactical displays, recognizing the Alliance attack patterns. "They're after Chomp," I realized. "This is a targeted extraction." The Queen snarled, her claws extending. "They will not take her." "No, they won't," I agreed. "But we need to move her. This is the obvious protective location. They'll concentrate their forces here." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You know their tactics. Where would you hide her?" I considered. "Somewhere they wouldn't expect, not a secure room. They'll check all of those, somewhere ordinary." "The Arboretum," she decided. "It connects to maintenance tunnels too small for adult Zarketh or armored humans." "Perfect. I'll take her there. I will accompany you." "No," I said firmly. "You're needed here. The ship is under attack. Your people need their Queen leading the defense." She hesitated, clearly torn between her roles as mother and ruler. "I'll protect her with my life," I promised. "You know I will." After a tense moment, she relented. "Take 2 guards. Go through the secondary corridors." I knelt to Chomp's level. "We're going to play a game of hide and seek, okay? Very quiet, very still." She nodded solemnly. "Hide from bad humans." "That's right. And your mother will come find us when it's safe." The Queen touched Chomp's head in a gesture of affection, then looked at me. Through our new biological connection, I could sense her concern and her trust. "Go," she said. "I will end this threat." With 2 massive Zarketh guards flanking us, Chomp and I slipped out through a hidden entrance. We moved quickly through narrow service passages, the guards barely fitting in the confined space. We had almost reached the Arboretum when an explosion tore through the corridor ahead of us. The guards moved instantly to shield us, but the blast knocked all of us off our feet. Through the smoke, I saw black armored figures advancing. The guards recovered quickly, charging forward to engage them. The confined space worked against the Zarketh warriors' size, but also prevented the Alliance soldiers from using their ranged weapons effectively. I scooped up Chomp and retreated, looking for an alternate route. The ship's layout was still confusing to me, but I remembered a maintenance access nearby. "This way," I whispered, carrying Chomp toward a small hatch I'd noticed earlier. Before we could reach it, a figure stepped out from an intersecting corridor. He wore the same black ops armor as the others, but his helmet was off, revealing a face I recognized. "Commander Vask," I said coldly. "Carter." He smiled without warmth. "And the specimen." How convenient. Vask had been my commanding officer in the Special Forces, the one who'd given the order I refused to follow, the reason I'd deserted. "She's not a specimen," I said, setting Chomp down behind me. "She's a child." "It's a bioweapon," he corrected. "One of several we've been tracking, and you, our missing hybrid soldier, bonded to it exactly as the simulations predicted." I kept one hand on Chomp, feeling her trembling. What do you want? To complete the mission. The Alliance needs that creature and you to perfect the next generation of hybrid soldiers. The war isn't over, Carter. It just went quiet for a while. It's over for me, I told him. And you're not taking her. He sighed theatrically. Always the idealist. That's why the genetic modifications never fully took in you. Too much conscience. He drew a weapon. I don't need you alive to study your DNA. The child, however, needs to be breathing. I lunged forward before he could aim, tackling him against the wall. The weapon discharged, the shot going wide. We grappled in the narrow corridor, his enhanced armor giving him an advantage. Run, Chomp! I shouted as Vask slammed me against the bulkhead. Find your mother! Instead of fleeing, Chomp let out a high-pitched shriek. To my astonishment, her scales began to glow, not with the usual blue, but with a fierce golden light, the same color as the Queen's eyes. Vask paused, distracted by the display. That moment of hesitation was all I needed. I broke his grip and delivered a precise strike to his throat, followed by a knee to his abdomen where the armor segments joined. He staggered back, gasping. I pressed the advantage, driving him down with repeated blows. You don't understand what you're protecting, he wheezed. That thing and you're not natural. Your weapon's designed to blur the line between species. To infiltrate and destroy from within. Maybe that's how we started, I acknowledged, delivering another blow. But it's not what we are now. I had him pinned when I heard Chomp cry out in alarm. Turning, I saw another soldier had appeared, this one with some kind of capture device trained on her. In that split second of distraction, Vask struck. The knife slid between my ribs with practiced precision, a killing blow. Pain exploded through my chest. I fell to my knees, vision blurring. Through the haze, I saw the second soldier approaching Chomp, who was backed against the wall, her scales pulsing in terror. No! I gasped, trying to stand despite the knife still embedded in my side. Vask kicked me down. It's over, Carter. The specimen is Alliance property. As my consciousness faded, I heard a sound like thunder. The corridor walls themselves seemed to ripple and tear open. Through the breach stepped Queen Zarketh, her scales blazing crimson, all 6 eyes focused on the humans threatening her daughter. The temperature in the corridor suddenly rose as flames, actual fire, erupted from patterns along the Queen's arms and chest. The blood fire, Vask whispered, actual fear in his voice. It's real. The Queen roared, a sound that seemed to shake the very structure of the ship. The flames surged forward, engulfing both Alliance soldiers in seconds. Their screams were mercifully brief. As darkness closed in around me, I felt gentle claws on my face. Chomp's tear-filled eyes hovered above me. Pa hurt, she sobbed. Pa fix. It'll be okay, I lied, knowing the wound was fatal. You're safe now. That's what matters. The Queen knelt beside me, her massive form somehow gentle as she examined the wound. The blade has severed major vessels, she said grimly. Take care of her, I managed. She needs you. Pa no go, Chomp insisted, her little hands pressing against my wound. Pa stay. To my shock, her scales began to glow again, not with fear or happiness, but with a deep, pulsing power I'd never seen before. The golden light spread from her hands to my wound, creating a sensation of warmth that pushed back the encroaching cold. The healing fire, the Queen breathed. She manifests it already. Whatever was happening, the pain was receding. I could breathe again, though each breath still felt like fire. What is she doing? I asked weakly. A rare gift among royal bloodlines, the Queen explained. The ability to heal through biological energy transfer. Few manifest it so young. Chomp's face was screwed up in concentration, her small body trembling with effort. After what seemed like an eternity, she collapsed against me, exhausted. Pa stay, she murmured, before falling unconscious. The Queen carefully lifted her daughter. She has stabilized you, but the healing is incomplete. You require medical attention. I nodded, somehow managing to stand despite the knife still in my side. The attack? Contained. The traitors who aided them have been identified. Her expression was grim. There will be consequences. I didn't doubt that. The Zarketh weren't known for mercy to betrayers. As we made our slow way to the medical bay, supported by the Queen on one side, I found myself reflecting on Vask's words. We were designed as weapons. Chomp, the Queen, even me, created or modified for war and destruction. Yet here we were, protecting each other, healing each other, forming bonds that transcended our origins. Maybe that was the real victory, not domination of one species over another, but the recognition that we could choose what we became, regardless of what we were made to be. The aftermath of what became known as the joining battle transformed the political landscape. The Alliance officially disavowed Commander Vask's actions, claiming he had gone rogue. Few believed it, but with evidence of illegal genetic experimentation made public, they had little choice but to accept the new reality. A human was now legally and biologically the consort to the Zarketh Queen. My recovery took weeks. The knife had done extensive damage, and despite Chomp's miraculous intervention, I needed multiple surgeries using both human and Zarketh medical techniques. Throughout it all, she rarely left my side, often sleeping curled against my uninjured side. "She fears losing you," the Queen observed during one of her daily visits. As do I, though for different reasons. I'd grown accustomed to her direct manner. Political reasons? Partially. She settled into the chair beside my bed, a chair specifically reinforced for her weight and size. "Your survival is crucial for the alliance we've begun, but there are personal considerations as well." That was new. The Queen rarely acknowledged anything resembling personal feelings. "The biological link between us has stabilized," she continued. "My scientists are fascinated by the adaptation your human physiology has made to accommodate Zarketh biochemical signals." "Is that why I can sense your mood sometimes?" I asked. It had been happening more frequently, moments of awareness that weren't quite telepathy but definitely beyond normal perception. "Yes. A simplified version of how Zarketh mates connect. Normally far more extensive, but impressive nonetheless in a cross-species bond." I shifted carefully, mindful of my healing wounds. "So what happens now, after I recover?" "That," she said, "depends on what you want, Dane Carter." It was the first time she'd posed the question so directly. What did I want? For years, my only goal had been survival, staying ahead of Alliance warrants, finding enough salvage to keep flying. Now I was consort to an alien queen, adoptive father to her heir, and a living symbol of interspecies cooperation. "I want Chomp to be safe," I said finally. "I want this peace to last. Beyond that, I'm still figuring it out." The Queen nodded. "Reasonable priorities." She hesitated, then added, "There is one more matter we should discuss. Your companion has made a discovery." On cue, Milo hovered into the medical bay. The coffee maker had been upgraded with additional processing units and a more sophisticated mobility system, gifts from grateful Zarketh technicians fascinated by his adaptation. "Ah, the patient is awake. Excellent. I have completed my analysis of the data recovered from Commander Vask's personal devices." "And?" I prompted. "I believe I have identified your origins, Dane. Your parents were not killed in a Zarketh attack, as you were told." They were Alliance scientists, specifically lead researchers on Project Chimera. The revelation hit like a physical blow. My parents created me as an experiment? Not precisely, Milo clarified. They were attempting to create medical applications for Zarketh genetic material, regenerative therapies, primarily. The military applications came later after initial success with you. I don't understand. You were born with a congenital condition that would have been fatal within months. Your parents used experimental Zarketh gene therapy to save you. When the military discovered the success, they took over the project, and you. The Queen watched me intently as I processed this. "Your beginning was not as a weapon, but as an act of love," she observed. "Much like my daughter, created in defiance of those who would end our line. Somehow, that made it both better and worse. What happened to them? My parents? They resisted when the military tried to weaponize their research, Milo said gently. There was an incident. They did not survive. You were told the cover story about a Zarketh attack and placed in Alliance care. I closed my eyes, absorbing the truth. My entire life had been built on lies, but not the ones I'd expected. Thank you, I said to Milo, for finding out. You deserved to know. He bobbed slightly in what I'd come to recognize as his version of a nod. There is one other detail you might find significant. The specific Zarketh genetic material used in your treatment came from the royal bloodline, specimens captured during early skirmishes. The Queen leaned forward. My bloodline. Indeed, Your Majesty. Genetically speaking, Dane shares more with you than random chance could account for. Approximately 8% of his DNA is derived from the same lineage as yourself and Princess Zaravex. So when Chomp recognized me, I began. She was recognizing family, the Queen finished, on a genetic level so fundamental even a child could sense it. The man who was meant to be, Milo added. According to Zarketh legend, the one who would unite bloodlines and bring balance. I shook my head in disbelief. That's a lot to put on a salvage hunter with a questionable past. Legends rarely conform to expectations, the Queen said with surprising gentleness. Yet here we are, human and Zarketh, joined by circumstance and biology, with a child who bridges both worlds. As if summoned by our conversation, Chomp came bounding into the medical bay, having apparently escaped her tutors again. She climbed onto the bed with practiced ease, careful to avoid my injured side. Pa better? She asked hopefully. Getting there, monster, I ruffled the crest on her head. Thanks to you. She beamed with pride, then noticed the serious atmosphere. Why sad? Bad humans gone. The Queen and I exchanged a look. We're not sad, I assured her, just talking about important things. Like what? How do you explain genetic engineering and interspecies politics to a child? But Chomp had proven remarkably perceptive for her age. Like family, I said simply. And how sometimes you find it in unexpected places. She nodded sagely. Like Milo, not person, not Zarketh, but family. The coffee maker emitted a sound suspiciously like a harumph. I prefer the term valued advisor, thank you very much. Chomp giggled, reaching out to pat Milo's casing affectionately. Funny coffee robot. The Queen watched this interaction with evident fascination. Despite ruling a vast empire, the simple family dynamic unfolding before her seemed to be something new and intriguing. The celebration of our union will resume once you are fully recovered, she informed me. The Council has requested a formal presentation of the royal family to allied worlds. Sounds intimidating, I admitted. It is merely ceremonial. Your presence alone will be sufficient. She paused, then added, though you might wish to avoid referring to the heir apparent as monster during official functions. I couldn't help smiling. I'll do my best, Your Majesty. Zareth, she said unexpectedly. What? In private, you may address me as Zareth. It is appropriate, given our bond. It was the first time she'd offered anything resembling personal intimacy. I nodded, testing the name. Zareth. Thank you. Chomp looked between us with obvious approval. Family, she declared again, settling comfortably between us on the bed. The Queen, Zareth, placed one massive hand gently on her daughter's head, then extended her other toward me. I took it, feeling that strange connection pulse between us. Yes, she agreed. Family. 6 months later, I stood at the observation deck of the Royal Palace on Zarkalix Prime, the Zarketh homeworld. Behind me, dignitaries from a dozen species mingled, celebrating the formal alliance between humanity and the Zarketh Dominion. I'd healed completely, though I still carried the scar where Vask's knife had struck, a reminder of what we'd overcome. My position as royal consort had evolved into something more substantial than I'd expected. Zareth valued my perspective as a bridge between species, and I found myself increasingly involved in diplomatic matters. "Contemplating the void again?" Milo asked, hovering beside me. He'd received yet another upgrade, his coffee maker form now enhanced with diplomatic translation protocols and defensive capabilities that would have made his original designers faint. "Just thinking about the journey," I replied. "From deserter to diplomat, not exactly what I planned. Life seldom follows our expectations. I, for instance, never anticipated evolving from a simple beverage dispenser to chief advisor to the human Zarketh royal family." I smiled. "You do make the best coffee in 2 empires, though." "A talent I maintain with pride." The massive doors at the far end of the chamber opened and conversations hushed as Queen Zareth entered. She moved with characteristic grace, acknowledging the assembled dignitaries with regal nods. Behind her came Chomp, or Princess Zaravex, as she was formally known, walking with newfound poise. In the months since the joining battle, Chomp had grown remarkably. She was taller, her scales developing more complex patterns, her vocabulary expanding in both human and Zarketh languages. The genetic modifications that made her royal bloodline special were manifesting in accelerated development and the occasional display of abilities like the healing fire she'd used to save me. She spotted me across the room and immediately abandoned protocol, running toward me with the same enthusiasm she'd always shown. "Pa, look!" She held up a small object, a perfectly formed crystal that pulsed with inner light. "I made it!" I knelt to examine her creation. "That's amazing, monster. How did you do it?" Focused my energy, like Mother taught. She demonstrated by holding her claws together, her scales glowing briefly. "It's for you." I accepted the gift, genuinely touched. "I'll keep it always." Zareth approached more sedately, though I could sense her amusement through our bond. "The princess continues to excel in her biological control lessons," she informed me, "though protocol during state functions remains a challenge." "Can't imagine where she gets that from," I quipped. The queen's eyes glimmered with mirth. "Indeed." The human ambassador approached, bowing respectfully to the royal family. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, Consort Carter. The treaty is ready for final approval." This was the culmination of months of negotiation, a formal peace treaty that went beyond the previous uneasy truce. It established trade relations, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements between humans and Zarketh. As we moved toward the ceremonial signing table, I felt the weight of history around us. 2 species that had once sought each other's extinction, now forging a future together. The ambassador presented the document, both a digital version and an organic Zarketh record embedded in living material. Zareth signed first, her claws leaving precise marks in both formats. I followed, adding my signature beside hers. "It is done," she declared. "Let this mark the true beginning of peace between our peoples." Applause and the Zarketh equivalent, that strange combination of hisses and stamping, filled the chamber. Chomp looked up at me, her golden eyes bright with excitement. "We made history, Pa," she said seriously. "You're the one making history, kiddo," I told her. "Zareth and I just helped set the stage." The celebration continued into the night. As it wound down, Zareth, Chomp, and I retreated to the private royal quarters, a vast suite of rooms that somehow managed to accommodate both Zarketh and human preferences. Chomp had fallen asleep, curled up in her specialized bed that mimicked the nest-like structures Zarketh children preferred. Zareth and I stood watching her, a moment of peaceful coexistence that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. "She grows stronger each day," Zareth observed. "The royal genes express themselves fully." "And the human ones?" "Less visible but present. Her empathy, her adaptability. These have human echoes." I nodded, thinking about the strange confluence of events and genetic manipulation that had brought us to this point. "Do you ever wonder if we were all just fulfilling some program coded into our DNA? If all of this was predetermined by whoever created Project Chimera and your royal genetics?" Zareth considered the question with characteristic thoroughness. "Biology provides potential and predisposition," she said finally. "But choice shapes outcome. You could have left her in that swamp. I could have executed you rather than accept the naming. We chose differently. She was right, of course. Whatever forces had shaped our genetics, our decisions had shaped our destiny. There is something I wish to show you, she said suddenly. Something few outside the royal bloodline have seen. Intrigued, I followed her through a hidden passage in the royal chambers, descending into the bedrock of the palace itself. The walls here were ancient, carved with symbols I couldn't decipher. The Hall of Ancestry, Zarketh explained, where the genetic memory of our species is preserved. The passage opened into a vast chamber filled with what looked like glowing trees, living structures that pulsed with bioluminescence similar to Chomp's scales. Each structure contains the biological essence of a royal generation, she explained, not merely records, but living memory. She led me to a particular formation near the center, one that glowed with unusual intensity. This is new, she said, created when our biological link formed. I approached cautiously. As I drew near, the structure's light shifted, responding to my presence. Within its translucent tissues, I could see patterns that somehow reminded me of both DNA helixes and computer code. What is it exactly? The biological record of our union, the first human Zarketh royal pairing. She placed her hand against the structure, and it pulsed in response. And this, she indicated a smaller formation growing from the main trunk, is Zarketh. Our daughter. Our daughter. The words still felt strange, but increasingly right. In time, her pattern will grow, branch, create new connections, Zarketh continued, and perhaps, someday, spawn new branches of her own. The implication was clear, the continuation of a lineage that now included human genetics. So I'm part of the royal record now, I mused. That's a lot to take in. You have been part of it since the moment you touched our daughter in that swamp, Zarketh said. The recognition was immediate, on a genetic level too fundamental for conscious awareness. What followed was merely the unfolding of what was already written in our combined biology. Destiny? I prefer to think of it as potential, realized through choice. As we stood before the living record of our unusual family, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known since before my desertion. Not because everything was perfect or because all conflicts were resolved, but because I'd found something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. I need to ask you something, I said, turning to face her directly. In the bioluminescent glow, her alien features had become familiar, even beautiful in their own way. All of this, the marriage, the alliance, the family unit, how much of it is political necessity for you, and how much is real? It was a question I'd avoided asking, partly from fear of the answer, but after seeing the biological record of our bond, I needed to know. Zarketh was silent for a long moment, her 6 eyes studying me with unreadable intensity. Zarketh do not make distinctions between political and personal the way humans do, she said finally. All actions serve multiple purposes. The alliance benefits my people. The biological bond ensures stability. These are facts. I nodded, trying not to show disappointment. However, she continued, there is more. When you protected my daughter at risk to your own life, when you chose to accept a bond with a species you had every reason to fear, when you worked to understand our ways rather than impose your own, these actions created something not accounted for in political calculations. And what's that? Respect, she said. Deep respect, which, among Zarketh, is the foundation of what humans might call affection. Coming from her, it was practically a declaration of love. I smiled, understanding the significance of what she was sharing. I respect you too, Zarketh, very deeply. She inclined her head, the crystal spines of her crown catching the light. Then our union serves all purposes, both political and personal, as it should. As we made our way back to the royal chambers, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. From battlefields to salvage hunting to royal consort. From solitary deserter to father and diplomat. Chomp was still sleeping peacefully when we returned. I adjusted her blanket, a gesture that had become second nature. She mumbled something in her sleep, a mixture of human and Zarketh words that somehow made perfect sense to me. She dreams of flying, Zareth observed, a common aspiration among royal hatchlings. We'll have to take her on a proper space journey soon, I suggested. Show her the stars up close. An excellent proposal. The royal yacht has been modified to accommodate your physiology. I laughed softly. You've thought of everything. I am queen, she reminded me with a hint of humor. Thoroughness is expected. As night settled over the Zarketh capital, I found myself contemplating the future, not with anxiety as I once had, but with anticipation. There would be challenges, of course. Two species with violent histories wouldn't achieve perfect harmony overnight. The Alliance would continue to pursue its own agenda. Factions within the Zarketh Dominion would resist change. But for the first time, these problems didn't seem insurmountable. We had created something new. A family that transcended species, a bond that defied design, a future that wasn't predetermined by our origins. Milo found me later on the balcony, gazing up at the unfamiliar constellations of the Zarketh homeworld. Coffee? He offered, extending a perfectly brewed cup from his integrated dispenser. Thanks. I accepted gratefully. Some things never changed, regardless of how surreal life became. I've been analyzing the data from the Hall of Ancestry, he informed me. The biological integration of your genetic material with the royal lineage is unprecedented. It appears to be creating new patterns even the Zarketh scientists don't fully understand. Is that a problem? Quite the contrary. It seems to be stabilizing previously volatile aspects of the royal genetics. The Queen's scientists believe this may be why Princess Zarketh has developed the healing fire so young, and with such control. I sipped my coffee, considering the implications. So the Alliance accidentally created exactly what the Zarketh needed, a genetic bridge to stability. Indeed. One might almost suspect a higher design at work. I raised an eyebrow. Getting philosophical in your old age, Milo? Merely observing patterns. The statistical improbability of all these factors aligning suggests that sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. I was going to say intelligent design, but your interpretation has merit. We shared a comfortable silence, watching as the larger of the planet's two moons rose above the horizon. You know, I said finally, when I found Chomp in that swamp, I almost walked away, almost followed protocol and eliminated a potential threat. Yet you didn't. No. Something stopped me, not just conscience or compassion, but something deeper. I touched the spot over my heart, where the knife wound had healed. Maybe it was the genetic connection, maybe it was just basic decency, but that one decision changed everything. For you, for the princess, for two species. I nodded, finishing my coffee. One choice, Milo, that's all it takes sometimes. A profound observation, perhaps suitable for inclusion in the royal memoirs, I laughed. Are you ghostwriting my life story now? Someone must document these historic events. My processing capacity is ideally suited to the task. Just don't make me sound too heroic. I was just a guy making it up as I went along. Noted. Though I believe Princess Zarketh would disagree with that assessment. As if summoned by her name, I felt a small presence at the doorway. Chomp stood there, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Pa, can't sleep more. I set down my cup and opened my arms. She came to me immediately, climbing into my lap with practiced ease. Bad dreams? I asked. She shook her head. Good dreams. Too exciting for sleep. What were you dreaming about? Flying, she said, looking up at the stars. All of us, you and Mother and Milo, flying to new places, making more friends. That sounds like a wonderful dream, she nodded solemnly. Not just dream, future. She pointed to a particular star, glowing faintly blue in the night sky. We go there first. I exchanged a glance with Milo. That's very specific. Did your mother tell you about that star? No. Just no. She tapped her chest, where her scales formed complex patterns. In here. Genetic memory, precognition, or simply a child's imagination. With Chomp, it was impossible to say where one ended and the others began. Well, I said, hugging her close, wherever we go next, we'll go together. She smiled, leaning against my chest contentedly. Always together. Family. As we sat there under alien stars, a human, a Zarketh princess, and a sentient coffee maker, I reflected on how strangely perfect it all felt. Not despite our differences, but because of them. We had each been created for one purpose, but had chosen another. We had been designed as weapons, but had become builders instead. In the end, perhaps that was the greatest victory of all, not conquering another species, but transcending the limitations of our own creation, becoming more than the sum of our genetic parts, creating a future limited only by choice, not design. Pa? Chomp's voice was sleepy again. Yes, monster? Happy. I smiled, holding her close as she drifted back to sleep. Me too, kiddo. Me too. And beneath the stars of a world I'd once considered enemy territory, with an alien child sleeping trustingly in my arms and the biological connection to her mother humming gently in my awareness, I knew it was true. Despite all odds, despite origins steeped in conflict and manipulation, we had found our way to something genuine, something that felt, against all reason and logic, like home. The end.